Thank you. Our next speaker is a very familiar face to all and arguably needs no introduction, but rather a much anticipated reintroduction. After 8 years out of office, Governor-elect John Kitzhaber is the first governor in Oregon history to be elected for a third term in office. His commitment to Oregon is embodied in his decision to return to the governorship at a time in life when many others might be pursuing more leisurely pursuits. Governor, we know you face very tough challenges in the days ahead. We're eager to hear your plans, so without any further ado, it's my great privilege to reintroduce you, Governor-elect John Kitzhaber.
Well, thank you, Pat, for that wonderfully brief introduction. I want to make just one slight correction. I'm not the one that faced the problems. We face the problems, and we need to remember that we're all in this together, and the only way we're going to get out of this current situation is by doing it together. I do want to thank the Business Plan Steering Committee for organizing this remarkable event, and I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to attend. And again, I'd like to recognize Governor Ted Kulongoski for his great and remarkable leadership in pushing the Oregon business plan throughout the last 8 years. In late 2002, as I mentioned this morning, as I was about to leave office during the dot-com recession, I talked to Duncan Wise and a number of people in this room and suggested that we needed to develop a unified plan from the business community to guide how we move forward to pull ourselves out of the recession and to grow Oregon's economy. And I'm very, very pleased to see how this summit and the business plan have evolved over the last 8 years. Clearly, these activities have become an integral part of our business and political framework in Oregon. But I think the time has come to move the Oregon business plan to the next level. From being a planning exercise, which sometimes receives the attention of the political establishment, to an action plan that produces a continuing and ongoing focused effort to grow our economy and increase incomes throughout the state of Oregon. Now, all of you, I'm sure, took note of the study that was sponsored by the Portland Business Association, Portland Business Alliance, the Port of Portland, and others that was released a couple of weeks ago on the economic health of the Portland metropolitan region. And it provided a very stark picture of job loss and declining incomes. And the fact is that that report is actually a microcosm of what's going on throughout the state of Oregon. Like all states, Oregon is facing a very, very serious fiscal crisis. In our particular case, a projected budget deficit of $3.5 billion, which is about 20% of our general fund. But if you look beyond this big number, we discover that this fiscal crisis is being driven by some very, very disturbing trends. Indeed, on our current course, Oregon is literally on a death spiral, an unsustainable course into the future. On the one hand, the demand for public services is increasing, in part due to an aging population, in part due to the recession, more people on the health plan, more people on food stamps, more people who need government services. And at the same time, our public resources are shrinking, not just because of the high unemployment, but also because per capita income has been gradually eroding over the last 10 years. And the fact is that the public resources that we do have are increasingly being spent on corrections and on the human consequences of neglect and abuse and addiction, and less of those resources are going into education and programs and efforts that improve the economy of the state of Oregon. Now, to understand the problem that creates, it's important to recognize the two different ways that we allocate resources as a state. One way is by investing in people, by investing in children, in families, in education, and in workforce development. Those are investments that give people a pathway to a family wage job. They're investments that give people a secure future and lift all of us up. People who are educated are less likely to become involved in the criminal justice system. They're more likely to be healthy. They're less likely to need human services. Now, the other way we spend money is by taking care of problems after they've developed, in foster care and in our prisons. And much of what we spend in our health and human service programs are actually expenditures, not investments. They're important in the sense that they deal with problems after they've developed, but these are problems that could have been prevented in the first place if we'd done a better job investing in people on the front end. Today in Oregon, we're spending more managing problems than we are investing in people. We've got our priorities turned around, and it's taking us in the wrong direction. And the central challenge in the next 2 years, and literally in the next 6 months, is to change that pattern of disinvestment. The time has come to break decisively from the past. That's one of the reasons I ran for this office, and that is how I intend to lead during the upcoming legislative session. But we need to be honest with ourselves. Breaking from the past is not going to be easy, but it is absolutely essential if we hope to secure the future of this state and the people who live here. Doing so requires 3 specific steps. First of all, we need to know where we're going. We need a destination. We need a common vision for where we want Oregon to be down the road. Second, we need to change the nature of our political debate from a focus on cutting budgets and raising taxes to a focus on growing the economy and redesigning the way we deliver public services. And third, we need the courage and the commitment and the capacity to stay the course, recognizing that we can't do this in 1 biennium or even 2, that it's going to take a 8 to 10 year committed effort to rebuild our state. So let me touch on each of these points in turn, starting with growing the economy. Actually, let me start with a vision, step 1. I think having a shared idea of where we want to end up in our state is essential to guide the individual steps we're going to have to make over the next 2 to 4 years to get there. And here's the vision or the destination that appeals to me. By 2020, by the end of this decade, when the children who entered kindergarten this September graduate from high school, I think we want to live in a state where all our children are ready to learn when they reach school, where we've eliminated the achievement gap on the front end, where students have the resources and attention they need to learn, and teachers have the support and resources they need to teach, where graduation rates are going up, where dropout rates are going down, where every Oregon high school graduate can enter post-secondary education without remediation, and where 80% of them get at least 2 years of post-secondary education, and 40% get 4 to 6 years of post-secondary education, and that we live in a state where the economy is turning out family wage jobs or pathways, career pathways to lead to those jobs, and where we've increased the per capita income throughout the state of Oregon back up above the national average. I want to live in a state that looks like that. And if we commit ourselves to that goal, and find the courage to stay the course, we can, in fact, reverse this pattern of disinvestment in education. We can reduce the cost of social services and corrections, and we can, in fact, reemploy Oregonians and get the per capita income back up above the national average. Now, the second step is to change the nature of our political debate from cutting budgets and raising taxes to a focus on growing the economy and changing the way we deliver public services. So let's start with growing the economy, which not only helps families and communities, but also generates the resources necessary to fund important public services like education. First, let me say that I strongly support many of the goals outlined in the Oregon Business Plan, and in particular, the goal of creating 25,000 jobs a year between now and 2020 and driving the per capita income of Oregonians back up above the national average. Furthermore, I'm committed to using the full authority of the governor's office to ensure that we meet these aggressive goals, and I want and, in fact, expect to be held accountable by you and by the Oregon citizens for making significant progress on this goal during my term. Now, while I'm committed to creating jobs and increasing per capita income, I want to elaborate and condition those 2 goals in 2 important ways. First, these goals have got to apply to all Oregonians. It's not enough to simply raise per capita income through spotted growth in the metropolitan area. We need to work hard to increase jobs and incomes in rural Oregon as well. Incomes in rural Oregon have got to grow as fast as incomes in the Portland metropolitan area. And we need to recognize that creating 15 jobs in Coos Bay is the equivalent of creating 500 jobs in Portland. The biomass plant in Lake County, with its 18 full-time jobs, is going to reduce unemployment in that county by 8%. And we need to be mindful of that as we begin to implement these goals. We must also commit ourselves to providing jobs and increasing incomes even faster in our communities of color, where chronic unemployment lags far behind the national average. Second, we need to accept the fact that growing a strong and prosperous economy cannot come at the expense of our natural environment or of our social communities. These are things that make Oregon unique. These are things that Oregonians cherish, and rather than a trade-off between a strong economy and a sound environment, Oregon's natural wonder and creative people provide us with a significant competitive advantage that gives us the opportunity to achieve our long-term economic objectives. So we need to move beyond the false choice between a healthy environment and a strong economy and seek ways to capitalize on the growing number of opportunities where those two goals are, in fact, synonymous. Now, I've already started implementing elements of the Oregon Business Plan since I was elected on November 2nd. Last month, I announced a number of key elements for job creation in the state of Oregon, including my intention to put together regional economic strategies that identify the unique opportunities and challenges, not just in the Portland metropolitan area, but in Eastern Oregon, Southern Oregon, Central Oregon, the coast, the Gorge, and the Willamette Valley. A lot's going on out in those areas. There's the biomass plant that I mentioned down in Lakeview. There's the remarkable community project that's going on over in Vernonia. On the coast, we have the potential of a new wave energy industry that has to be integrated and made compatible with the needs of crabbers and fishermen and other environmental interests. In Southern Oregon, we have the opportunity, in fact, the need to develop a new harvest and forest management paradigm that recognizes the unique nature of those Southern Oregon forest ecosystems. In the Gorge, we need to ensure that we have usable industrial land without compromising the environmental and scenic value of that remarkable part of our state. In the Willamette Valley, we need to find a way to locate higher speed rail. But the fact is that we can't meet these challenges without somehow integrating the resources and knowledge of our counties, our cities, our business community, the civic sector, and state and federal government to get the job done. So I intend to develop regional community economic solutions centers throughout the state and co-locate state agency field staff to help get this job done. We need to develop regional economic development approaches that prioritize the resources we have and then integrate the resources and the energy to make those developments possible. This morning, many of you attended breakfasts that were organized around these regional strategies, and we're going to take the input from those breakfasts to help modify and make this idea more robust as it goes forward. On November 10th, I also announced a number of transition teams that are dealing with specific elements of the opportunities to improve Oregon's business climate that are summarized in your business plan. These include accelerating energy efficiency efforts through retrofitting schools and other public buildings, seeking new financing models to engage the utilities and the private capital markets to accelerate energy efficiency in residential, commercial, and industrial properties. Second, supporting restoration forestry on both state and federal lands to make our forests healthier, to create fiber for local mills, and to encourage the development of a biomass industry for rural Oregon. Third, connecting unemployed Oregonians with high-demand jobs through targeted workforce training. And fourth, restructuring and expanding Oregon's business development tools, increasing capital availability, and streamlining the delivery of the state's business finance and support programs to make them more friendly to the end users, businesses that are trying to expand in our state and businesses that are trying to locate here. These economic development strategies, along with our efforts to expand the manufacturing sector, will be the topics of this afternoon's forums on ideas to help the economies grow. And members of these transition teams will be there to give you an update on our progress and to solicit your input and ideas to make these products better as we move forward.